What's going on, everyone? Chris back again with another episode of What Could Have Been in Wrestling. This time it's episode 21. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who wrote in for the question and answer session. Last episode, definitely appreciated. This week's topic comes from the suggestion of Clyde Bloss 7188, and he wanted to know, what if Seth Rollins didn't turn on the Shield in June of 2014? So let's get right into it. I think anyone who's been a longtime fan knows this scene when Triple H and Randy Orton are out on Raw after Batista had quit the company and quit Evolution earlier that night, as Evolution and the Shield had just gone at it at 2 straight pay-per-views. Triple H had said the war wasn't over, and while he still wanted to face the Shield, Batista grabbed the mic and said he was done with the Shield, and he wanted what Triple H promised him: a one-on-one match with Daniel Bryan for the WWE title. They get into a heated argument. Triple H even tells Batista, I can't give you the match because Daniel Bryan is out injured. And then he makes a comment saying, even if I did, you'd probably choke it down anyways. And if you look at Randy Orton's reaction in the background, it's pretty funny. And then Triple H goes on to say, until this situation is settled with Evolution, no one's getting anything. Batista confirms that he understands, and he quits. And he was out. He gave the Miss America wave and walked on out of WWE for about 4 years. So again, going back to what happened later that night, Triple H comes out with Orton and tells the Shield that there's always Plan B. Seth Rollins grabbed the chair, and when Roman and Dean Ambrose step forward, Seth winds up, and you hear "no" from actually a fan in the back in the audience, and he whacks Roman in the back with the chair. Dean turns around shocked, and then Seth attacks him, and Seth solidifies his heel turn, and the Shield is no more. So in this situation, rather than having Seth turn on the Shield and become a member of the Authority, I think there's a different way you can go about it. In this situation, I think there's a different heater they could bring in to replace the lost muscle of Batista. In my opinion, you can bring in Big E Langston. At that time, he was still relatively new to the main roster, and he had been one of the original guys at NXT, and also, again, had the same build as a Batista, very, very powerful, very muscular, had already been in a heater role for Dolph Ziggler and AJ Lee, and I think he would have fit in nicely with that basically duo now of Orton and Triple H. However, there's another guy I'd want to bring in to make it a trio of wrestlers where Triple H wouldn't be wrestling each week. And the second guy I'd want to bring in, actually, would be Bad News Barrett. Barrett had been getting extremely over with the crowd, and he had actually been definitely a fan. Not a fan favorite, but getting cheered for that, telling everyone that he was afraid he had some bad news for everyone. And it was definitely getting over. He was definitely the hottest he had been since being the leader of the Nexus about 4 years ago at that time. And I think he would have had a good spot there. Because, one, he could talk. He could obviously wrestle for them. And he could always be delivering bad news to the Shield, telling them that, who they're going to have to face and what hoops they're going to have to go through to get to this new group of Triple H, Orton, Big E, and now Bad News Barrett. So with that in mind, we move actually into Money in the Bank, which was happening just a couple weeks after Seth had made his original turn. In this scenario, I still think you can have, obviously, Roman in the WWE, the Undisputed title match, that ladder match for the vacated Undisputed title because Daniel Bryan was injured. A match that was ultimately won by John Cena. I think you could still have Roman in that match. And I think instead of having Dean and Seth in Money in the Bank, this time you just have Seth Rollins fighting for the Money in the Bank briefcase. And you replace Dean with Big E. Big E can obviously go toe-to-toe with Seth. And in this scenario, I think Big E can then actually nail Seth and maybe give him a big ending off the ladder like he did in the 21 Money in the Bank. And now for the Authority, Big E can win the briefcase, which guarantees him a world title shot. So now they have insurance in their back pocket, the Authority that is, because their main guy, who they just brought in, is the Money in the Bank holder. And you can take, honestly, in my opinion, you can take Dean out of the Money in the Bank match and you can have him go one-on-one with Bad News Barrett, because Barrett was Intercontinental Champion at the time. And I think what can happen there is you can actually still have Barrett retain. After in the match, what they can do for a spot is when Dean goes for, I hated this name, what they call the wacky line. Barrett can then nail Ambrose with the bullhammer, and then he can pin him and retain the Intercontinental title. So then going forward, there's one other thing I would change, because now obviously you have the Intercontinental Champion in Barrett in this group with the Authority, and you have the Money in the Bank holder as well. At this time, Sheamus was the U.S. champion because he had won a Battle Royal a couple months earlier when Dean was the U.S. champion to win the belt from him. In this match, Jack Swagger was also in it, and he was one of the final participants. I would have actually liked to see Swagger win the U.S. title at that Battle Royal for this reason. Swagger, in reality, had actually, right before Money in the Bank, he attacked Wade Barrett on SmackDown, and he had actually separated Barrett's shoulder, so Barrett was actually out with an injury. In this scenario, you can run a similar type attack, but I don't think it would have been, I don't think Wade Barrett would have been beaten down quite as badly, because now that he's a member of the Authority, I don't think, obviously, like I said, he's going to be a sacrificial lamb to Jack Swagger. Maybe Swagger goes off after him, but they just brawl off. You know, Swagger doesn't throw him shoulder first into the barricade and separate his shoulder. And what you can have there is then you can have the next night on Raw, Triple H also making it official that not only is Big E the Money in the Bank holder, he's going to get a shot at Jack Swagger and his U.S. title. Big E can then win the match, and in my opinion, what you can do to protect Swagger a little bit throughout this match is you can do a flash pin where Big E wins via roll-up, and basically he now steals the U.S. title in a certain type of way from Swagger. So now the Authority holds the Money in the Bank briefcase, they have the Intercontinental title, and now they also have the U.S. title. So now they have, obviously, multiple titles, and also the briefcase as well. Going forward now into Battleground, you can still go forward with the same Fatal 4-Way they did, with John Cena defending the Universal title. And you can try to have Triple H cause a little dissension within the Shield, because he can put Roman Reigns again in the match for the world title, and he can hint at it and saying, looks like Roman is the only one who's worthy of challenging for the world title. And while the Shield, other Shield members, Dean and Seth, can challenge for the undercard titles, the Intercontinental and the US title, Triple H can kind of make it up, can try to create tension, saying, it seems Roman is a little bit higher, is a little head and shoulders above you other two, and that's why he's in the main event for the main title. So with that in mind, I think you can go ahead and you can have Seth take on Big E for the US title, and you can have Wade take on Dean in a rematch for the Intercontinental title. Building up to it, Big E can remind Seth that he was the one who beat Seth for the NXT title back 2 years ago, and now he's going to beat him again and retain his US title. Obviously, it'd be a good back and forth match. I think those two would work well together. The size and power of Big E versus the agility and the high flying of Seth. Seth can actually win with a curb stomp, and he can become the new US champion. In a rematch from the month before at Money in the Bank, Dean can take on Bad News Barrett. And this time, the bad news is for Barrett, because this time Dean is able to extract some revenge. He can hit the Dirty Deeds, or I think it's now known as the Paradigm Shift. And he can pin Barrett, and he can win the Intercontinental title. In the main event, with that Fatal 4-Way, with Roman Reigns, Kane, Randy Orton, and John Cena for the Undisputed title, in that match you can still have the same outcome. Cena hitting the FU on Orton onto Kane, and then pinning Kane to retain the Undisputed title. Triple H can then again try to sow some dissension and have the authority figures point out, hey, Dean and Seth have belts, but Roman, how come you couldn't bring a belt home? This, in my opinion, would then set up the six-man for SummerSlam. So now you had individual one-on-one matches, but you haven't had the 3-on-3, the big six-man, the Shield versus versus Big E, Bad News Barrett, and Randy Orton. And that can be, obviously, the catalyst to that could be, since the Authority lost their belts, now they want to get a measure of revenge, and now they want to get in a six-man with the Shield. I think that would be an excellent match. Obviously, the Shield had already had great six-man tag matches with the Wyatts, and with Evolution as well. So I don't see why this one at SummerSlam could definitely be a show stealer, even though we did see the birth of Suplex City, which I'm a fan of, but still I think that six-man would steal the show. And while it would be a back and forth, and I think it'd be given a good amount of time, it'd be a longer match, I think it would need to end with Roman Reigns getting the pin on Randy Orton, because that would be a big feather in Roman's cap at that point, and to pin a former world champion would definitely be a statement for how they viewed Reigns in general. Moving forward from there, we start moving into Night of Champions, and in reality, Roman Reigns actually did not make that event, because he got diagnosed with a hernia like a day before the event and was in the hospital and was out for quite a while. So that can move forward, actually, and what you can do there, in my opinion, is you can still obviously have Dean and Seth take on Big E and Wade in a tag match. So now we go from a six-man to a standard tag match. And while it may look like, obviously, it's a kind of a letdown in terms of a culmination of the feud, given the circumstance, it's kind of hard to go anywhere else. The other thing you can really do is a 3-on-2 handicap match that I think Dean and Seth should still win. Reason being is because after they win that match, I think then the lights can go out, and the Wyatts and the Wyatt family, this time now featuring Braun Strowman, the four-man triumvirate, can actually attack Seth and Dean. I say that obviously because now I want to transition them away from the Authority. They've gotten the belts off. They took the belts from the Authority. They've gotten now 2 straight pay-per-view wins over them. And now I think you move forward and you can transition back to a feud with the Wyatts going in now to Hell in a Cell. So leading up to Hell in a Cell, you can obviously have Dean and Seth in tag matches and also just in brawls and segments going after the Wyatt family. And you can have them teaming together versus the Wyatts in Hell in a Cell. So now it's a tag team match in Hell in a Cell. In that scenario, and this is what's going to lead into it actually, I think you can actually have the Wyatts actually come out on top in this. And I think because Reigns was still out. Reigns was actually out until late 2014. So in this scenario, if he still has the hernia and he's still out, it's still a 2-man group representing the Shield, but it's just a tag team and not a trio. And I think the numbers game can just be too much for just 2 guys to overcome. And at Hell in a Cell, you can still have the Wyatts coming out victorious. From there, I think that feud can stay alive in a certain way. But now we move closer into Survivor Series. Going into Survivor Series, the big match there was the Battle for Control, where it was Team Authority versus Team Cena. And the big stipulation was if the Authority didn't win, they're no longer the Authority. As a ruling by Vince, and that they would still have backstage power, but they'd be off TV. And God knows we needed it, because I was sick of the Authority on TV at that point. So, for that match, I think what you can do is, you can still obviously do the 10-man elimination, but I think the teams would be a little different, because Seth would actually be siding with Cena. In my opinion, along with Dean Ambrose. He wouldn't have his one-on-one match with Wyatt. He'd be on that team. Along with Dolph Ziggler, who was in the... Dolph Ziggler was in Roman's role, because Roman was out. He was given the spot that Roman was supposed to get. And then you can obviously have Cena as the 4th man representing his own team. And then they had actually hinted at... Because I think at that point they had actually broken up the Wyatts. So from there, I don't think the Wyatts are broken up in this situation either. I think you could just have the Big Show be the cleanup guy for Team Cena, be the big guy and the muscle for that team, and they can take on the Team Authority of Rowan and Harper, and also have so now Seth is not on this team. So now you can make, instead of taking out Orton and having the Authority taking him out, you can have him be the main centerpiece and be the main focal point in the Seth Rollins role, in my opinion. And then you can obviously have Big E and Bad News Barrett to round it out. So there's your 5-on-5 match that's going on. And in that match, obviously, while the teams can be, now you can have 2 guys eliminated on both sides, like they did originally, when the Big Show turned on Cena and knocked him out, and then shook hands with Triple H, so it was then 3-on-1, where Ziggler was by himself. You could do something very similar, where maybe the Wyatts are the first ones eliminated. You have the Authorities trio, again, of Big E, Bad News Barrett, and Orton, squaring off against Ziggler, Dean, and Seth. And again, this is that Survivor Series, and that's why this is important. Because from there, I think what you can do is then have Dean turn on Seth and hit him with dirty deeds. He doesn't have to shake hands with Triple H because I think Dean is very much a loner and a little bit more of an independent guy who wouldn't be necessarily siding with the Authority, but solidifying a solo heel turn. And at the event where the Shield debuted, 2 years previous, where they attacked Ryback at the same pay-per-view, Dean Ambrose is the one responsible for them disintegrating. And with Roman out injured still with the hernia, Dean now turning on Seth at basically their 2-year anniversary. That is the end of the Shield. You can still have the same outcome where Ziggler is still the sole survivor with Sting debuting, but then that would obviously move us forward with Dean and Seth getting into a feud, but this time with the roles switched. Seth is the babyface and Dean Ambrose is the heel, which is where I think the feud actually, I think it would have been a better feud that way, because I just think that's actually, in terms of their characters, that's where they were more meant to play in terms of the dynamic for that feud. So that's where I'm going to stop it there. I'm not going to get into what the feud between Seth and Dean would have been. But the Shield still would have lasted. It wouldn't have lasted even throughout the rest of the year. It would have lasted, about 5 more months. But it still would have all come to a head, and the Shield would have ended at Survivor Series. Again, basically almost exactly 2 years after their debut. So I think it's kind of poetic to end it there. So let me know what you think. Let me know who you think actually could have been the replacement for Batista in Evolution and help the Authority if they didn't go with Seth Rollins turning on the Shield. If you like my idea of having Big E be the muscle, along with having Bad News Barrett join. Also, let me know if you think that the solo titles would have had as big a presence, with Big E being not only the Money in the Bank winner, but also being the U.S. champion as well. So again, leave your comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And please keep the suggestions coming of what you'd like me to talk about. And I promise I'll get to everyone's topic requests. And until next time, like I said, be on the lookout for also additional episodes of the Match Analysis series. For that, you can also leave down below what matches you want me to analyze. I've already gotten some feedback on that as well. So like I said, thank you everyone for the comments and the support. And I'll be up again soon. Take care, guys.